Everybody, and happy Friday. It's Friday at 10:30 Eastern, and that means it's time for Your Money Story here on Quick Take. I'm Renita Young, your host, and today we have a good one for you. I'm going to welcome Naseema McElroy, who is the founder of Financially Intentional. And get this, she paid off $1 million of debt in just under 3 years. Can you imagine? Listen, we're going to talk about how she did that and the unique challenges she had while going through this, which pushed her even further. And really how she put herself in a strong position to be able to buy her freedom. So let me hold on for a moment, and I'm going to bring on Naseema. She'll be here in a moment. Hang on.
Good
Hello,
morning.
how are
Hello.
you?
Good. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for joining us.
Of
I'm so
course.
excited to talk to you because ever since I've been following your story, it's just been amazing. So thank you for spending the time to
Oh, I
be here.
appreciate it.
Great, great. So, hey, you are a labor and delivery nurse by trade.
Yeah.
Uh, Debt slayer at night, by the way. But tell me something. You grew up in California. What was your relationship with money like growing up?
I had a very interesting relationship with money. Um, Unlike most people, I was raised by a single dad, and so I had to take on a lot of the household responsibilities early. So, I don't know. I just knew that we didn't have a lot of money, and but the thing that my dad did was put me in really good schools. So in those good schools I was surrounded by people that did have a lot of money,
Okay.
but I always thought being rich wasn't for us, it was for them.
Really?
And yeah, and it wasn't anything that I really um wanted to attain because I didn't know it was possible for me. All I
Hmm.
was taught was, in order to be a success, you have to go to college by any means necessary. You go to the best college, and that's pretty much it. Like, I wasn't really taught about money. I was taught that in order to in order to just do better in life
Hmm.
and to raise yourself up, it's just all about college.
Yep, yep, I can
Yeah.
identify with that, and most other millennials too,
Yes.
because a lot of us we were told coming up, listen, go to the best schools, don't worry about the debt right away,
Yep.
just get the best education you can get because you're going to need the network, right?
Yes.
And so you had an aha moment in 2015 when you were like, I'm almost paying $2,000 in student loan debt. And so, briefly, before we go into that, I just want to say many people are used to this average debt load for federal loans at about $35,000. I really think it's higher than that, honestly. I'm not discounting what's out there, but I know people with advanced degrees who have more than, $100,000 in debt. And it's real and it's nothing to be ashamed of. And I'm glad we're having this conversation. So tell me about that aha moment in 2015.
Yeah, so I didn't have $35,000 in student
Hmm.
loan debt. I had about closer to $200,000 in student loan debt, and I was in a position where I had everything that made it seem like I had it going on financially
Hmm.
on Instagram. I had the house, the car, the six-figure job, but I was broke. I didn't
Hmm.
have any money in savings. I was a single mom, and I figured if something were to happen to me, like my kid would be left out, out there. And I didn't know, I didn't want her to be in that position. And so I figured, okay, I'm done with school
Yeah.
finally. I
Hmm.
can finally figure out how to do this money thing instead of just making it seem like I figure I know what I'm doing. Like, I have to really, really figure it out for myself.
Yeah, that definitely would make it click.
Yeah.
And then, so what I love about your story is that it perfectly illustrates like the power of financial independence because you were able to buy yourself out of an abusive marriage and a toxic job where
Hmm.
you had to be the whistleblower, right?
Yeah.
And so kudos to you for doing that because the issue is a huge one in Black and brown communities. And so can you just briefly run us through the job situation and the other situation,
Yeah.
and lead us on the path.
Well, the reason why I share those situations, I just want to say, is because people always think that in order to really succeed, you have to like win the lottery or have this like big windfall, and then everything else, your life just takes off from there.
Hmm.
And the reason why I share that is because no, I've through this through this process, I've had a lot of struggles,
Yeah.
and so yeah, when I was paying off my debt is when I was going through my marriage. And that's what also prolonged my debt payoff, is because towards the end of my debt payoff, I had to pay some money towards my divorce. And because of my filing status, I had a whole lot of IRS debt.
Hmm.
And, but being in a secure financial position is what allowed me to be able to step through that divorce successfully and be
Hmm.
able to identify that, listen, like I have the means to get myself out of this relationship, which is not often the case in toxic and abusive relationships. And my
Right.
relationship was abusive. As far as my job environment, like you said, I'm a labor and delivery nurse. I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area. And just because I'm in progressive California doesn't mean morbidity and mortality, especially for Black women, is not really high. And so I was witnessing that for the first time, like on an almost daily basis, where, you know, I
Right.
had to try to speak up for women in labor that were having serious adverse events just to bring a baby into the world. And it
Hmm.
was so devastating. I felt I was going to lose my license, but it just hurt because I saw myself in every one of those patients. And
Yeah.
then when I spoke up, then I became that patient that was neglected, because unfortunately I worked for a healthcare system that was also my insurer, that was also my medical
Oh,
provider. So when
okay.
I went there to try to, you know, speak out and then try to get just medical services for myself, mental health services for myself, I was being told that, oh, you know, this is a traumatic situation. We can only deal with post traumatic stress, so we can't help you. And so it was this
Wow.
cycle, and it was devastating. So, but the
But
thing is that this was the second job for me, and I was in a position where I could walk away.
hmm
And that was a time that I went from working 6 days a week to working 6 days a month, and was able to step back, regroup, work on my mental health. I was also pregnant during that time, so I knew that I
wow.
needed to be present for my second daughter. And it was just because I was in a financial position to do so. A lot of people wouldn't be
Wow.
able to speak up. A lot of people wouldn't be able to
Mm-mm.
leave their jobs. And I could just imagine, I mean, my daughter was already preterm, like the
Hmm.
complications that would have happened if I had to stay in that stressful environment.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
man, thank you for speaking up.
Hmm.
That was a very brave thing to do. And you had the stability, the confidence. I don't know. I feel like you might be a slayer in other areas of life, and you might have done it anyway. But it's a good reason. It's a good reason to work toward financial independence sooner rather than later. And
Yeah.
so one of the things that you did, um, you looked at your largest expenses, right? A large expense that many people value themselves by, right? And so tell me the first thing that you did toward paying off all of your debt.
Um, you referred to selling my house. That
Yep.
was actually the last thing I did. So
That
a
was the
lot of
last
people,
thing.
yeah.
Okay.
So a lot of people mistake that and say, "Oh, you just sold off your house and then sold your house and paid off all your debt." Actually, that's
Not
not the
all of it.
case.
Okay.
Yeah. So what happened was is that I was one of those Dave Ramsey followers, and so I did like the baby steps. So I did the debt snowball and zero-based budgeting, and so I just started attacking all my debt. It wasn't until I got down to $50,000 of my debt, and that $50,000 included my divorce fees and this IRS debt that I had to pay as a result of my um, divorce, and like maybe $10,000 in student loan, that I sold
Hmm.
my house. And then that made me completely debt free. But that
Okay.
big chunk is what represents that big $1 million number,
Yeah.
because of course I live in the San Francisco Bay Area. I live outside the San Francisco Bay Area, like I mean, like 40 minutes outside of Oakland, which
Hmm.
it would have been a lot more if I lived
Yeah.
closer to San Francisco. But yeah, that's why it's $1 million in debt, because towards the end, that big chunk of that house debt was gone.
Important to note that that is a part of your net worth. Like people,
Yes,
when they calculate their net worth, they don't include mortgages. And so, folks, that it means all of the debt that you hold, not
yes.
not just the debt that you can see, a little in touch, maybe a little bit closer. But so then, walk me through your debt payment strategy.
Right. So I just briefly mentioned the debt snowball and zero-based budgeting. So the debt snowball is one of the methods that you use to pay off debt, and it's highly personal. You do what works for you, but this really worked for me. So the debt snowball is when you list out all your debts from smallest to largest balance. You work on the smallest balance first while paying the minimum payments on the rest your of your debt until that's knocked out. Once that payment is knocked out, now you have this payment that you don't have to make on that. So now it snowballs because you have more money to put towards your next debt. And that really, really worked for me. And the main reason why that really, really worked for me is because I didn't have a lot of high interest debt where they talk to
Good.
you about like the debt avalanche, where you got like these double digit, like the credit card loans and stuff like that.
Hmm.
But that really, really worked for me. But it was like the motivation, it was psychological, like that, just like slaying, like every seeing those debts just knocked out. It was like
Hmm.
the momentum that I needed in order to in order to like knock out that debt really, really
Yeah.
fast. Yeah.
That's good. And so what I read is that you also did a few other things that were very, very unique and worth noting. You house hacked for a little bit after you and your daughters were renting a home.
Hmm.
You convinced your landlord to sublease the basement. That was brilliant. Similarly, I heard of other things. Like I've interviewed someone who they would go to thrift stores and like refurbished furniture and sell that. Like that's a lot of
Hmm.
time, but if you like it and you can make money off of it, go ahead. But what were some of the other ways that you brought in more cash too?
So that was later on when I rented that house, but actually when I owned my house. So I bought this house when I was pregnant, so I was a little bit loony. So I bought a 5 bedroom, 5.5 bath house for me and my little daughter, and so I had all this extra room. And I'm a nurse, and there's always nurses that are traveling to the San Francisco Bay Area because we pay the most in the country. And
Hmm.
so I just rented my room out to my coworker,
Okay.
and that brought my living expenses down. And I think we always look for these small ways and where we can save money. The two biggest expenses you're going to have are going to be your car, your transportation, and your housing. And
Hmm.
if you can get your housing costs under 30 or 25 to 30%, like then you can really start making moves financially. And so that's always been my goal, to keep my housing costs that low. And so when I did rent, and the rent was really high because I moved back to Oakland, I was like, listen, we're gonna bring these costs
We need to
down.
bring it
And
down.
I had a basement, and of course
Yeah.
I have coworkers that are
Yeah.
nurses, and that's another hack. Always rent to nurses, because they come, they go to work, and they sleep when they're in your house. They don't
Uh-huh.
bother you. They're very
Okay.
clean, and so
Good
that's what
call.
I did.
No,
That's what
that's
I
such a
did.
good idea. Brilliant
Yeah,
idea. And I should, yeah.
another thing that I did for to reduce my transportation costs is that when I wasn't using my car, I shared it on a service called Turo, and so
Hmm.
that basically pays my car note. So when or brings my car expenses down. So if you can
Okay.
eliminate those two big expenses or minimize them as much as possible, then you free up so much of your income to do so many other things. So I look for ways like that to free up income. Um, Other than like, small things like, oh, not buying coffee, and, all
Yeah.
the taboo things that you hear about personal
Hmm.
finance.
Yep. You're absolutely right. Okay. Okay. So you've been chronicling all of this on your blog, Financially Intentional, for a few
Hmm.
years.
Hmm.
And so for you, what does it mean to be financially intentional?
I think it's to be aware of the ways in which you can constantly optimize. I think
Hmm.
when we think of being financially free, we think of like this one destination or this number, but it's really about the journey. It's about the little things that you do along the way that set you up for success. It's about like making sure that your financial decisions match your day-to-day actions. And if those two things aren't aligned, then you need to reevaluate. And I think I think what a lot of people don't understand is that, you know, there's setbacks. There's going to be setbacks. There's going to be stumbles. There's going to be um, places along the path where you feel like you're not where you want to be financially. But it's about taking the next best step. Even if you fall off, even if you have to start over. Listen, I'm the bounce back queen.
Yes.
Like I bounce back from a lot of many of things, and it doesn't stop once you are on your path to financial freedom. So yeah,
Or after you've reached whatever the goal is. Some people it's a
exactly.
number. So, right, like some people it's a number, right? Some people it's getting completely out of debt. Like, and I want to know your opinion on this. For me, financial freedom, financial independence means like I can afford to make choices.
Yes,
I'm buying myself options, right?
yes.
And so, like, what is that? What does financial independence mean to you?
Yeah, financial independence is exactly that. It's about choice. It's really
Yeah.
about choice. Like, I mean, like there's so many options out there. It's like the more you're able to understand how your money works and how to use that for you, the more
Mm-hmm.
options you have, like period, point blank. Like without even hitting this like retirement number, I know I could be like, you know what, maybe I want to live in Thailand for like 3 months.
Yes,
And,
exactly.
I'm a nurse. I don't necessarily have to retire. I can
Yeah.
like go per diem or take travel contracts or whatever when I
Yep.
come back. And I can go live there for 3 months or even when I did before. If I want to just work 6 days a month instead of 6 days a week, like I
Uh-huh.
can do that. And that's about choice. But that's about, okay, what do I need to do to make this happen and being financially aware of that and putting
Yeah.
those wheels in motion.
Great way to describe it. And so you do have a podcast, Nurses on
Mhm.
Fire.
Yes.
You teach nurses specifically how to achieve or how to become financially intentional and achieve financial independence. And so I'm wondering, like, what are your top three tactics that you usually give nurses specifically? I have a couple of close friends who one's a nurse practitioner, another is a doctor, and they're watching right now. So what do you have to tell them?
The reason why I specifically target nurses is because I think that nursing is like the ultimate job for financial independence because we can write our own checks most of the time. I mean, it just depends on how uncomfortable you want to get, or it doesn't even have to be uncomfortable. But I think the first thing that you need to do is really optimize your income. There's the income possibility is limitless. If you
Yeah.
have to move across the country, come to the San Francisco Bay Area for a little while, take a contract,
Hmm.
you can increase your income that way. We also have benefits that a lot of people don't have. At my job, I'm classified as like a government employee. So I can contribute to both my 401k and my 403b and a 457 at exactly the same amount. So that's almost $40,000 a year that I get to
Yeah.
put away pre-tax, which drops my taxable income. So people are always afraid of making money, and people always comment like when I talk about like how much money can be made, oh, it's just
Yeah.
going to be taxed. No, you need to learn how to optimize
Yeah.
your
No,
income.
really.
And so there's so many different ways that we can do that. So income possibility is limitless. Ways to do tax deferred, to save on taxes is limitless.
Hmm.
And then I think the flexibility in our jobs is what is super like beneficial. Like I said, you can
Hmm.
work 3 months on a contract, make a lot of money, and then take those other 3 months off. And so
Yeah.
to me, that's freedom, that's independence, because again,
Hmm.
that breeds choice.
Couple ideas I've recently heard of. One of my friends did, I mean, COVID testing. There was one
Yes.
of, and even now, like vaccines, giving
Yep.
vaccines at
Yep.
different sites. So, like, I would imagine there are a billion more ways, but thank you for giving us a few of them. And so, like, is there anything that you've learned about being a nurse during COVID that's maybe even helped you manage your finances better?
Oh, so the thing about being a nurse during COVID is actually it's the first time that I've seen nurses being laid off
Hmm.
and their hours cut. And it hurt because a lot of times we look at our jobs as super duper stable.
Yeah.
But it just woke me up to the fact that at any time this could have been you.
Yeah.
And we lean on these jobs a lot, and we frown on maybe people who are entrepreneurs, like that's not stable enough. Um, it just made me really, really rooted in why I do what I do
Okay.
because like I said, taking control of your finances gives you options. So if something were to happen to me where I wasn't making the income that I was making, like people's income were being like cut in half, a quarter,
Yeah.
like
Wow.
I could position myself where I could live comfortably without, feeling a big bite. So, I mean,
Good.
that's
Good.
the biggest thing that it taught me is like, okay, like this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. Like because
Good.
like, these jobs ain't loyal.
Great points. Okay, great points. Now, almost wrapping up here, we got to get into your book, Smart Money.
Hmm.
Congratulations, you've been
Thank
getting
you.
great reviews. I know
Thank
you
you.
released it in March, but tell me, what do you want people? You go through a lot of your personal experience that we talked
Yes.
about so
Yes.
far already, but what's the one thing you want people to walk away feeling or knowing after reading Smart Money?
I just want people to know that it's possible for them and there's a roadmap and they don't have to start from zero. I think a lot of people feel like I said, like they need this big windfall in order to, achieve this certain financial status. But it's about those little steps that you take along the way, those small wins, those things
Mhm.
that accumulate. That aggregation of marginal gains is what we call it.
Yes,
And
love it. Love it.
yes, and you don't have to be perfect. Like,
Yeah.
listen, we all have setbacks, we all have stumbles, but it's about taking the next step and how you
Hmm.
react to that. So that's
And
it.
briefly in that, you advocate for investing while you are still in debt. There's some schools of
Yes.
thought. There's some schools of thought that say don't invest until you've paid your debt off, but you say the opposite. Tell us why you feel so strongly about it,
Well,
and and
yeah,
and the ideas of where someone who maybe it's someone shot in the dark who is $200,000 in debt. Where can they start? So tell us why first, and then where can that person start?
well, yeah, this is very close to my heart because I mentioned that $30,000 that I had to pay towards the end of my debt pay off, but that was to the IRS because, like I said, I was gung ho Dave Ramsey. That's a school of thought, and he believes that you don't contribute to investing your investments while you're paying off debt. Well,
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't work for everybody, and that's a big thing I learned about personal finance. You can't be dogmatic. Like personal finance
Yeah.
is personal. I'm a high income earner, I'm in a high tax state,
Mm-hmm.
and if I was not, so I could have saved, if I would have invested while I was paying off my debt, which would have been totally possible, and I could have actually paid off my debt a little bit faster. I missed out on saving $80,000. So not only did I pay
Did
the
the
I
numbers? You did
I have the
flip.
numbers, girl, broken down. It's pretty
Listen.
sad. Listen,
Okay.
so
Wow.
instead of yes, so instead of the $30,000 that I paid to the IRS, I could have saved $80,000. So that's $130,000 I left on the table because I didn't invest. Now, the way
Okay.
that people should be doing that is they need to at least be investing in their company's retirement up to the
Hmm.
match. That's the very least.
Yeah.
After that, or if you don't have a company that matches, or I mean, you still should be investing something, but also open up an IRA, an individual retirement account, and most people
Hmm.
qualify for a Roth IRA. You should be at least trying to fund that. $6,000 a year. $6,000 a year is $400 a month, a little over $400 a month. Like that should be a goal for people to fund. And people are like, oh, $400 a month, that's a lot. It's really not. Look at how much you spend at Target. That's all I'm gonna say.
Listen, I don't even have any words. I don't even have any words for that. But no, thank you for that. And I mean, many people now are waking up to becoming players in the stock market. And so, is that something that you did? Did you buy stocks? Did you invest in any markets, maybe index funds or anything else, ETFs, or what did you? And what was your personal favorite?
So through this whole thing, like I was learning about investing. I was very scared to invest because I thought
Hmm.
investing was buying real estate. And in my early 20s, I got burned buying real estate. And so I was really, really, really
Okay.
scared about investing. But I read this book that changed my life. It's called The Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins. And that's
Okay.
where I learned about investing. Set it and forget it. Invest in index funds. I made sure that my retirement accounts were optimized to invest. And that's how the bulk of my money is in index funds. It sits there, it's invested in the market. And when index fund is, it basically tracks the market. So
Yeah.
since the inception of the stock market, the market has gone up at least 7% year over
Hmm.
year on average. And that
Yeah.
includes every recession, every
Yep.
economic downturn, everything. It's always going to go up. So if
Right.
you don't try to play games and dip in and out and hit the next GameStop or the next AMC and just
Right.
put your money and invest it in the market and just set it and forget it. And it's just about investing incrementally, but doing it on a consistent basis. Just
Hmm.
leave it there and you're good.
Have you done any short selling?
Yeah, so so recently I did learn how to trade, and that's been a game changer for me. But the bulk of my all my money is in index funds. Like my net
Okay.
worth is tied up in index funds. This stuff
Good.
is stuff on the side, which I call play money, something that I can learn with. And yeah, I've done that, but a lot of people bet the farm on these things and they don't have any
Yeah.
understanding of the market. It's just some quick tip that they heard from one of their friends, and I would stay away from that.
Yeah.
But a lot of people, like I said, are leery about doing this $400 a month towards an index fund, which will set you up, I mean, towards your IRA, with that, which will set you up on a really, really strong footing financially. But they're
Hmm.
willing to just give you thousands and thousands of dollars to throw on the next lottery ticket, basically.
Got you. Absolutely. And so you're getting a lot of love in the comments, and I want to see if we could take any questions. So far, these are just comments. Taking control of your finances equals financial freedom, someone said.
Hmm.
Let me see if there are any more questions here. It looks like these are mostly comments, but do you have any last words for people about becoming financially intentional? Starting this road for the first time.
You know what? I think the saying is true. Your net work is your net worth. And it doesn't mean like throw away all your friends. It means that change the things that are surrounding you, change your circle of influence. And the way that I do that is I listen to podcasts about financial independence. And I listen like from people that I can relate to. There's plenty of people that look like
Hmm.
me, that come from places
Yeah.
that I come from, that talk the way that I talk, to eat the same food as me, that
Hmm.
that have been on this journey, and that I can see myself, and that makes me be able to see myself doing it. And so that's what I did, and that's what I surrounded myself with. And so when you say paying off $1 million in debt seems like this crazy goal, now it's a norm. When you say having $1 million in assets and retiring before you're 45 is like this pipe dream, now it's your norm.
Hmm.
So it's just you change your circle of influence, and the more that you do that, the more that becomes possible for you. You always want to surround yourself by people that you aspire to. So again, that's by listening to podcasts, reading books, changing your social media so that it only reflects those people that you can look up to, instead of this
Hmm.
gossip and all that other stuff. That's real fun, but
Yeah.
what you don't understand is the messages that you're putting into your brain, you have control over. So if you're
Yeah.
constantly seeing people meeting these financial goals that you thought were impossible, but you continue to see this over and over again, then it becomes possible for you.
Absolutely. And now I know how to pay off $1 million in debt.
That's right. I got the
And
roadmap.
all
We
of
got the roadmap.
we got the roadmap, and all of you
Yes.
too. And so thank you so much for joining us, Naseema. I really appreciate it. I want to make sure we stay in touch for more projects. And everyone out there, if you want to reach Naseema McElroy of Financially Intentional, make sure you click over to Financially Intentional. It's also financiallyintentional.com, right?
Yes.
And you could, ask her questions as well as listen to her podcast, the Nurses on Fire
Yes.
podcast. So, on behalf of Quick Takes Your Money Story, thank you so much for joining me. And
Thank you for having me.
thank you. Enjoy your weekend.
All right. You too. Bye.
Bye bye.